me your full name.
Connie, Bevelin, Simmons, Nelson, Simmons. Well, my mother's name was Vivian, and they said I looked just like her, so everybody in town called me Little Viv. And then my mother called me Beva.
How old are you?
88. I grew up in Goshen, Utah. We were farmers. My dad was a miner. He was really honest. He was really frugal. He didn't like to spend money.
Okay.
But he worked on my grandmother's farm too. He'd go to work on the farm. Then he'd go to the mine. And I don't remember my dad ever sitting down in the house. He used to make me little toys and stuff. He'd sit up in the mine and carve little toys for me. He made me a little rocking chair and a little spinning wheel and a little wagon. And he made me all kinds. And I had them for a long time. And then when I got divorced and got moved, everything got broken. So I have one little thing left. A little man that jumps between sticks. I still have that one. It's in my china closet. My mother hung wallpaper. And she worked in cafes and stuff. So we had a good family for a while. Then my mom and dad got divorced. My mother was kind of a party girl, and she liked to drink, and she liked guys to pay attention to her. So she'd go with guys, and then she'd come back home, and my dad would take her back.
Okay.
But it wasn't a really good situation.
Yeah.
My grandmother lived with us.
Okay.
My grandmother kind of raised us. But I had a good mother in lots of ways. She loved me. She made sure I took vocal lessons and stuff like that. That was my Grandma Jensen, and she lived with us until I was 9 years old.
Okay.
And we had coal stoves back then. We didn't have furnace and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And she slept with me in my bed, and so she'd teach me timetables and how to add and all kinds of stuff. And we'd take the pillows and warm them on the stove, and then run and put them in the bed to warm the bed up until we'd get in bed so it'd be warm. Then when she left, I felt my heart would just about break. I have 2 older brothers, Sharon and Elroy.
And you're the baby.
I'm the baby. We had dogs all the time, but they were not allowed in the house. And if they came in the house, my grandma used a broom and swept them out. She wouldn't let them in the house. Sometimes I have to go herd the cattle on the ditch bank while they haul the hay, and I hated that. My dog would come with me, and they'd get in the hay field, and you'd have to go round them up and bring them out. Oh, I hated herding the cattle. They'd use pitchforks to pitch the hay up, and they made my brother and I tromp the hay down so that the load would be even. And then we'd make a hole in the middle of the hay and play fox and geese. And when they found out we made a hole, then they'd fill it up. But my brother and I, and then they had cheap grass that'd get in your legs and stuff, and we'd run around the hole and play fox and geese and kind of make us happy, so we had something to do while we were hauling hay. I liked it when my dad killed the pigs, because everybody in town would come down to the house, and we'd kill the pig, and then they'd take the pig bladder and wash it out and blow it up, and we'd play football with the pig bladder. We had a straw stack, and we'd play who's the biggest man on Bunkers Hill, and we'd get up on the straw stack and push each other down. They always took care of me. They let me go up on the hill, but then you'd slide down and the straw would get in your pants. We played softball against our mothers. Our mothers were the best players, and they beat us every time, but then when we got older, we'd play against Payson, and we won every game every year that we played, except one, and they beat us by 1 point. But they said they didn't like to play against Goshen, but we couldn't beat our mothers. Our mothers always beat us. They used to have dances on the street. We had a bunch of kids that run around together. And the boys and girls, we didn't pair off. We just all run around together and had fun. And we'd go to the dances and dance on the street and stuff. We had all kinds of fun. The elementary school was in Goshen, but we went to high school in Payson, because Goshen, there was only 600 people in Goshen. I always wanted to grow up to be a wife and mother. My mother was gone a lot, and so I always thought when I grew up I wanted to be a wife and mother. That was my dream. I took vocal lessons, and I thought I'd like to be on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scout someday. Because I had a really good voice. I won a lot of contests and stuff. When I was little, they had the Depression.
Okay.
And so my grandmother had the farm, and that's how they lived.
Okay.
And then guys would come through in the Depression. They'd come through on the train and stuff, or there would be like tramps that come through. Yeah. But they'd always come, and my mother would always fix him a sandwich or something, and always gave him something to eat on the way. But they were just guys who were out of work and looking for work. And so, it was during the Depression. But we had the farm, so good that we had the farm. My mother worked on the sheep shearing place, and she'd always take me with her. And then when they had the orphan lambs, my mother would bring the little orphan lambs home for me, and I was like Mary Had Little Lamb, because they followed me all over. Of course, I never knew when they killed them, but I always wondered what happened to my lambs. My mother left, and when she said, well, she'd come home if my dad would get a cafe in Goshen. So my dad got the cafe, and my mother came home, and she started the cafe, and my mother left with a guy and left us with the cafe. So that was my real job. I helped my dad run the cafe for about a year. So I'd go to high school, then I'd come home and work on the cafe till about 11 o'clock at night. So that was my first job. When I was a girl, my mother, she was gone a lot, and I wanted to go down and see my grandmother. She was going to Mona to hang wallpaper, and she wouldn't let me go with her. I don't know what she had planned. I said, I'm going to go, and she says, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And I had a swimming suit, and she says, no, you're not. And I said, she slapped me on the back, and I said, I'm going. She said, no, you're not. She left, and I got on my horse, rode up the canyon, got my friend. We rode about 18 miles on our horses down to Mona, because I was bound determined I was going to go. I got down there, my grandmother wasn't home. So we watered the horses and rode back. And on the way back, the horses ran away with us. My best friend was Lorna. And one year, it snowed so bad in Goshen that the snow was up above the fence post. But Lorna lived up the canyon. So she'd either stay at my house or I'd stay at her house. But she couldn't wear the same dress to school twice. So we decided we'd walk up to her house through the snow. And we'd sink in the snow. And when we got to her house, we were just blue with cold. We didn't have telephones in Goshen, so our mothers didn't know where we were. But they knew that we were together, so they didn't worry about us. But anyway, we got to Lorna's house, and we were about frozen.
Oh, that's scary.
And we were snowed in for a week. Clifford.
Clifford.
Nelson.
Okay, how did you meet him? Clifford Nelson.
They moved from Bountiful down to Payson. They bought a motel in Payson.
Okay.
And then I met him in high school. He was 19, I was 18, we got married. So when we got out of court, I called them, but they were already on their way to come get me. So they loaded everything in the back. My brother came in, and it was Thanksgiving, and I had a turkey in the oven, and we turned the turkey off and put it in a bag to come eat on the way home. And my brother just picked up my stove and carried it all out by himself. He was a big husky guy, and put it in the truck. And then we loaded 9 of us in the pickup truck, and then we started down the canyon. It was cold, and so some of us get up between the mattresses and try to make so that we'd have some little rest in between. And then on the way down, my dad would say, well, we'll stop at the bus station to get you on the bus station, but we never stopped. We kept going. Anyway, my brother came and got me and brought us home, and that's when we came home from Seattle. But we lived in Seattle 11.5 years. My oldest boy's named Craig, and then I lost a little boy. I fell down a flight of stairs.
While pregnant?
Yeah. Oh. I was about 7.5 months pregnant, and I fell down a flight of stairs. So we lost him. He lived 45 minutes. And then 3 years later, I had Brad. And then 18 months later, I had Tammy. 18 months later, I had Todd. And 18 months later, I had Reagan. When Reagan came along, Clifford was kind of messing around with other women, so I went to the hospital and had Reagan all by myself. Next morning, I called all my friends and told them we had a baby girl. So he didn't even know she was born until the next morning. But then I ended up working for the Utah Department of Transportation for 30 years. I did some accounting, and then I ended up being the computer technician for 30 years. So I worked for the UDOT to support my kids, and then sometimes I work 2 or 3 jobs. Sometimes I worked at UDOT, and then I'd go tonight and work in a cafe or a theater, taking tickets in the theater and stuff. But before that, when I was living in Seattle, I used to take in babysitting so I could feed my kids. And then I took care of 6 other kids under 2 years old for about. Then they'd come and pick up the kids and take them home. Then I took in ironing and work until 12 o'clock at night. And then I'd get up and do it the next morning over again. I remember we lived out in West Weber, and my kids, they'd always play together. And if they were out in the field somewhere or something, I'd just whistle, and they'd say, "Here we come." One time they were out, they watched the calf be born, and they did all kinds of stuff. They'd go ice skating out on the pond out in West Weber and stuff, and my kids always played together. Craig was always my stalwart. He was my helper. And Brad was he was a funny guy. He never sits still. He had to be on the move all the time. And Tammy, she's a person who really has to accomplish everything. She came in the office and she was just crying, and I said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" She says, "I got a B." It was the first time in her life she ever got a B in school. And then Mark, he was the one that went working on a farm and stuff, and every time he'd get a paycheck, he'd buy something special for Mom. Todd, he's kind of my quiet one. And he used to, every time I sit down, he'd cuddle up to me because he didn't get a lot of attention. I was so busy working and stuff, so every time I sit down, he'd kind of cuddle up to me. And then Reagan was my baby. She's been my sweetheart. They're the most important thing in my life. Every Easter, we used to get together with my brother. My brother had 14 children. But we'd go down to Goshen and Eureka and meet with my brother. And one time we were having a picnic, and they had a railroad track that went through Goshen, but it didn't have a train that came through very often. So we were having a picnic on the railroad tracks, and the train started coming. We had to pick up everything, get off the railroad tracks before the train got there. Every Easter, Grandma Connie would have an Easter party, and everybody'd come to Grandma's Easter party. But then I made out clues, and I made them rhyme. Then I'd hide the clues, and they'd have to find the clues to find out what was at the end of the clue. Then I'd had presents for them at the end of the clue. Aww. And they loved the clues, and all the kids, they'd always gather around and try to find the clue to find out where the Easter bunny was, or where their presents were at the end. I'd hide the clues around, but one year I put one behind my shirt. So they had to find the clue on the shirt. They about undressed me.
Oh my gosh! Like,
when I was little, Christmas was fun. My mother loved to decorate the tree, and I remember every Christmas I'd get a robe and slippers for Christmas. Every Christmas, I used to love to play with paper dolls. We used to play paper dolls all the time, so that I had boxes full of paper dolls that I played with. And then when I had my kids, I'd always worried about what I could do for them for Christmas, you know. One year we decided we'd all vote and we'd get a trampoline, and I wouldn't buy Christmas for any of them. So we got the trampoline, and then Reagan wanted a doll. I said, "But we've got a trampoline." She said, "That's all right, Santa Claus will bring the rest." So guess what? Reagan got a doll. Aww. Do you still have your doll?
I still have it's a Chrissy doll that needs hair grows. I still have it to this day.
When we lived in Seattle, I had a kind of a great big picture window. Okay. So every year I'd paint Santa Claus on the window. Every year, and people always. And then we had a tree out in the front of the yard. It was a big blooming tree. And we'd make a snowman, and then I'd stick arms out of the tree and make snowmen out of that. Yeah. And then the kids, of course, my kids like to ski. So we used to go skiing. Merlin, Simmons.
And then how long were you married with Merlin?
48 years. Well, I went to this, they called it the Sociables dance.
Okay.
And he came and asked me to dance, and then we got together, and he took me home I went home that night, and then he came over to the house, and I showed him pictures of my kids, and we got acquainted. We bought a home in West Weber. It had 7 bedrooms. So we had bedrooms for the kids, and but they had a good home out there. And then when they were all gone, we bought this house as a retirement home. Okay. And then we lived in this for about, I guess it was about 30 years before he passed away. Okay. My husband and I went on a mission to Russia. Wow. And then I used to sing there. And one time I was singing in the chapel, and I sang the Lord's Prayer, and they all clapped. So I sang in Russia as well. But then later...
You were a couple missionary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then later on, we had a little family group we called the Generations. And then we'd go around and perform everywhere. Yeah. And I had my kids and me and my grandkids and my grandkids, and we all did performances and went all over Utah and Idaho and everywhere.
What's your favorite song to sing? Did you have a favorite?
The Holy City.
Okay, what makes you happy?
My family. I always tried to figure out little things where we could do little projects for the kids. It was before they had Pinterest, and I'd get all kinds of stuff that I'd do for the kids. I made all kinds of things, didn't I, Reagan?
Goop and
Goobly goop and Play-Doh and beads and. And one time, I had Reagan's little girl here and a couple of my other little grandkids. So we decided we'd make dolls. So I got some old fabric and I just cut out some dolls and I made them sew them up and stuff them. And we went down to the DI and got some clothes for the dolls. And they still have the dolls. I think Reagan still has, Kylan still has hers, doesn't she? And they love those dolls. So I was always trying to figure out something to do with the grandkids. I have 26 grandchildren and 55 great-grandchildren. And more to come. I like to do things with my kids mostly. That's my best hobby. I used to go jump rope with the kids and stuff and roller skate with them and all kinds of stuff. I used to oil paint all the time. These paintings on the wall are mine.
What's one word or motto you've tried to live by?
Honesty and integrity, and be kind to others. And I used to sing to my kids, if you can't say something that's real nice, don't say anything at all.
Like that.
And so we'd be riding in the car and the girls would be gossiping about it, and I'd sing, if you can't say something real nice, it's better not to say anything at all.
And if you can't say something that's real nice, it's better not to talk at all is my advice. And she would just keep singing it over and over and so loud that
you couldn't
yeah,
talk
until
anymore.
we'd finally give up.
I love that.
I worked for the state, and they'd come in and I'd say, old cuss word.
Yeah.
And so the contractor, he said, I got all my guys on this, they quit swearing, they all say old cuss
Oh,
words.
cuss word.
Be cautious in what you say, don't gossip, be honest in your dealings. If you borrow something, return it. Keep your house clean. If you have something, pick it up once. Don't sit it down and move it over a dozen times and then pick it up and put it away. My kids and my grandkids are my life.